What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and today is January 27th of 2020. Well, folks, I hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are. And in today's video, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Global markets have entered into a pretty large state of fear, with U.S. indices down 1.5%, and some of the Asia indices going down as much as 4, 5, or 7% over the last few hours. And this has to do a lot with the coronavirus that's been spreading predominantly out of China and now into a variety of other countries across the world. So the question here is whether or not this is something that's going to be easily contained. Is this something to be feared of? Again, we're going to be trying to take a very neutral stance on this, but also talk about how markets are reacting to these events. All right, we've got a lot of things to talk about right after our quick sponsor. Our sponsor for today's episode is TaxBit. The IRS recently released new forms in 2019 that require all taxpayers to attest to whether or not they traded cryptocurrencies, no matter if they made gains or losses. TaxBit automates your cryptocurrency taxes, enabling you to effortlessly track, calculate, and report your transactions. Easily connect your exchanges to securely sync your transactions and run them through TaxBit's tax engine. Generate your completed tax forms with a single click. Founded by tax attorneys and CPAs, TaxBit is the most trusted cryptocurrency tax solution. Get 10% off your tax plan today with a free trial using promo code DataDash. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and really dive into what's going on here, guys. We'll visit cryptocurrency markets in just a bit. It definitely plays a role into all of this, but I want to go ahead and talk again about the current state of a much larger market, and that is the global equity market. So again, a multi-trillion-dollar market seeing pretty severe dips across the board. So we can get the worst case scenario here, which is nearly 8% down here in the China A50, which is a massive index, similar to the Dow Jones or the S&P 500 for Chinese equities, down nearly 8% in the futures. This means that they're going to open up nearly 8% down in valuations. Singapore MSCI down 4%. The MSCI Taiwan, so this is again major indices of Singapore and Taiwan, down nearly 4% across the board here. We can see global markets are taking a hit too. Most indices are down nearly 2% or more. And we can come down to U.S. markets here, which are actually bearing probably better than any other indices here, but still down nearly about 1.5% across the board. So again, very concerning stuff here. Very interesting to see how markets are reacting. And I'm not going to try to keep it from you guys. In this case, you probably know what it is. It's the coronavirus that's spreading right now that's got a lot of people worried. The fact that a lot of people have been seeing headlines that this is worse than SARS was back in 2004, that this is going to be something that is difficult to contain, that is highly deadly compared to a lot of viruses that have spread in the past. But I want to go ahead here, again, without trying to cause too much fear. We'll visit equities here in a bit and talk about what this might mean. And also how Bitcoin has been actually serving as a nice hedge here over the last few days since this has really started to become a well-known issue across the board. I want to go ahead here and talk a little bit about the statistics, okay? So there's a really good website here where you can actually track the coronavirus outbreak to some degree. This is basically compiling a lot of the confirmed cases of deaths that have been reported, and you can see what location they're in. You can see here that not only is the majority of people who are currently infected with the virus here in China, but along with that as well, you can also see in different countries where there's a case in Seattle here in the United States, one here near Phoenix, one near Chicago, one in Toronto. So again, we can track this stuff not only on a numbers basis, but also on a geographical basis, which is actually pretty important in this case to be able to kind of see where things are spreading. Now, I want to go ahead here, before we even talk about some of the details here, I want to go ahead and just talk about what you should be watching for in the numbers, because I think that's probably the most important thing. We can all have our own personal biases. We can, see this as a genuine threat or not, but the numbers generally don't lie, okay? Now, there's something to take into mind before I make my point here. This is mainly coming out of China right now. And again, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but I know, being someone who's been in finance for a pretty long time, I know that China tends to buff the numbers, meaning that actually I'd say an opposite term. They tend to just generally manipulate the numbers and keep them suppressed. In this case, they usually have lower numbers in these kind of fearful cases to keep people, compliant, keep people, basically in line in this case, not to be fearful and just follow, basic protocol in this case in China. So again, In this case, the numbers are probably a little bit suppressed. But at the end of the day, it seems like the reports are coming through. Obviously, you can't really hide it. The media's out there, even in China. So let's just go ahead here and understand what we need to look for in the numbers. So we can see here, this chart here is really only measuring back about a week ago here, right, where there was about 278 confirmed cases. And now we've inflated all the way up to a number that's 10 times as large as that, 2,700. Now, it's not a crazy amount of people who are totally confirmed with having the coronavirus. But, and again, we also have to factor the deaths here in this case. The interesting thing here is the death rate is actually very high. For the total recovered at 54, we're having more people who are dying from this virus. So it's not something good to get. That's definitely something to be very clear about. But the major thing I want to talk about here, with a high death rate, that's what has me concerned. But in reality, what you should be concerned about here, if you're wondering about whether or not this is going to be containable, is really a factor of basically the growth in the numbers in this case. So if we tend to see here that on a daily basis, this number is starting to grow, basically in doubling in value on a daily basis. So for example, the other day we went from 916 confirmed cases up to 2,000. And if, for example, on the following day here on the 26th, we were to see, for example, 4,000 or 8,000 and then 16,000 and 32,000 and 64,000, when it starts to basically compound and the value just gets exponentially higher than where it was before, and it spreads it geographically, these are the signs of something that is not being contained. All right, so that's what we would want to not see here. You know, I think at the end of the day, I don't want this to spread. I think all of us are genuinely concerned about this because as humans, we can all be affected by it. And I do feel for the people in China and stuff who are struggling with this. Now, let's just go ahead here and talk again. Now we know what to look for in the numbers. We do not want to see this climb exponentially. If it does, it's going to be much more difficult to contain, not to mention if it's spread out geographically in other different countries. The other thing to take into mind here, there's a few key things to understand. Where did the coronavirus really originate from? There's a lot of different debate right now across the board from a variety of sources here as to where it's come from. But it is pretty clear right now from our knowledge of where viruses originate that this was originating from a form of exotic animals or different types of fish or meat products that were sold in local markets in China. Some people, for example, have attested that this has come from eating bats. You've probably seen the videos. I'm not going to play it. It's disgusting in my opinion. In China, Chinese citizens are known for eating a lot of exotic types of animals, in this case, that you usually, a lot of people probably wouldn't think about eating here in the United States. But because of that, there are some animals and certain species that are prone to spreading these human and animal viruses that can not only pass through animals, but also pass through humans. So this is basically where we think it's originated from. Another thing to take into mind as well that I think is probably the most important factor here is not just the amount of people who have either recovered or died from having the virus. The question here is what's known as the incubation period. Now, the New York Post and a few other sources have actually highlighted a quote from China's National Health Commissioner. This is Ma Zhaohui. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's been a long time since I did my Mandarin, but basically said this flu-like virus has an incubation period of around 14 days. And this is not good. Okay, this is probably the scariest factor. And I'm not here to fearmonger, guys. Again, I told you guys in the numbers, if we see the numbers slowly start to plateau off, that's a great sign that this is being suppressed and that we're dealing with it. And we'll hopefully take a very big lesson from it, not to let this happen again. But what it means to have an incubation period of 14 days, to put it in plain English, is it's before the virus actually becomes active in this case. So basically imagine it like a sleeper cell in a sense, like an agent that's coming to infiltrate another country who's trying to spy or gather intel. They go quiet for 14 days and then they start taking on activity in this case. It's the same thing here with a virus. It basically finds a host inside the body to basically incubate in for a while, and then it finally comes out, becomes active. You start to get the symptoms. It can start spreading to other individuals. So this is the really concerning thing here, is that you won't know in many cases that you have the virus for over 14 days in some cases. Sometimes you get it quicker, sometimes it's later. It depends. There are multiple strains of the coronavirus. And again, we go through, I think in this article here, they actually dive into a few of the different forms here. So there's basically four different varieties of it. So here are a few of them: the acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. Again, you can see SARS-CoV, Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus, and the new coronavirus from Wuhan in this case. So we've had different forms and strains of this virus over time. And again, the major thing to keep in mind here is that this incubation period that can last up to 14 days, and the sheer fact that the numbers are growing like they are, has me a bit concerned. So again, at the end of the day, the thing to watch are these numbers. If we see by, I would even say, for example, give or take 2 days, it goes up to 4,000, right? So if we get 1,400 more cases here in the next 24 hours, that's going to be a genuinely concerning number for me. And if that continues to grow without any signs of progress, then this is going to be something very difficult to contain. There might really have to be a shutdown on major transportation, at least major security checks. They've already shut down transportation to the Wuhan region in China. And if you guys want to keep up to date with these things, I recommend you go watch Box Mining's videos, Michael Gu, who's in Hong Kong right now, kind of covering the case that's going on and generally throughout China, but also spreading into a variety of different regions, such as Hong Kong. Again, I think it's very important to keep up to date with this, not to be fearful of it, just to keep informed, and definitely consider being prepared if this were to get really big. But again, Michael's done some great work in this. He's done about 4 live streams right now. Definitely a little bit lengthy, but it's good. It's good to sit down and just listen as he goes through the articles. He talks about some of the things, and he's got a great kind of on-the-ground experience being in Hong Kong about the current situation and how they're reacting to it in that region of the world. So again, I recommend you guys go check that out. But again, as Michael, I think, has said himself too, it's good not to get overly fearful about this. And there's a reason why they can't just simply shut down transportation. Reason being is that that means massive losses to the economy, and that's a big reason, as we go to our point here, as to why the major indices in China and all throughout Asia, such as Singapore and Taiwan, are seeing massive declines, because they know that if this is bad enough, if there's a risk that this continues to spread, it not only means a lot of people are going to die, and it's going to be very expensive, and it's a very sad thing that so many people have already died, over 81 people, but along with that as well, we have to consider the fact that they're going to start shutting down major forms of transportation. They're going to start cutting down on exports in case that they have to go through and do security checks on whether or not those exports of certain meats or foods might contain the virus. Again, we don't want this spreading globally. No one has an incentive for this to spread. So again, for the sake of controlling this, there very well may be a case where we start to see some slowdown in the global economy, and therefore in global equity markets, due to an expectation for declining earnings, right? So it's a very interesting case scenario, guys. And I'd like to know what you all think about this. I think it's very interesting here to see how Bitcoin over the last 48 hours has really picked up pace. Again, could just be some buyers coming in, guys. I'm not going to try to say that this is absolute confirmation. But again, as the numbers have started to grow larger here, you've seen, again, Bitcoin ticking up here. And along with that as well, we've seen equities drop pretty significantly, right? We already had a pretty significant drop the other day here at the close on Friday. And now opening up on Monday, we're going to be opening down. This is the triple Qs. This is an ETF for the NASDAQ. So you can see here, we're basically going to gap down and open up at this price range where I have my crosshair marked here on the chart, or my cursor. So very interesting stuff. We have not seen a gap like this in the NASDAQ and also the major indices since back here in August of 2019. So it's been more than half a year since we've seen this. Very interesting stuff. Something definitely to take into mind as a significant price move. It showcases that this might be something a little difficult for us to control, and sadly might lead to a lot more suffering before it becomes easier to control and maintain. All right. So again, this isn't something I'm not championing this, guys, just because I'm holding Bitcoin. I'm just saying in this case that, again, it's interesting to see markets that are serving as hedge. For example, we can even take a look at gold and silver. Right, gold ticking up 0.7%. Silver here, I also see up about 0.8%. You start to see hedges acting very similarly. Notice how gold and silver, again, we're kind of pushing downward sideways before, and over the last 2 days, like Bitcoin, have started to tick up and coinciding with one another. So I think this is, again, proving in this case that you want to make sure you have investments that can hedge during these scenarios. If things get really bad, again, that's where something like gold, silver, Bitcoin can come in handy, right? Anyways, that's besides the point, guys. I hope you all are having a great day wherever you are. If you like this video, drop a like. I'd like to know in the comments down below what you all think about the coronavirus. Are you guys concerned about it? Do you guys think it's a lot of fluff? I think it's a very interesting topic to kind of ponder on. My opinion will really determine over the next few days if we see the continued number of cases rising, and also the total death count compared to the recovered continue to rise. This number is growing larger and larger compared to the total recovered, and that's what really has me concerned. All right. Anyways, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Stay tuned.